So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the importance of a good quality reference image as I draw this black German Shepherd dog. So my friend really wanted me to draw a memorial pet portrait for her mum, and she had two dogs that she wanted me to include. She had these dogs at different times of her life. One passed on very recently and the other over 20 years ago. As I always do, I asked my friend for clear photographs of each of the dogs so that I could draw them as accurately as possible. This wasn't a problem for the dog that passed away the most recently with modern technology. The photographs were clear enough that I could see everything I needed to. The problem came with the dog that passed away all those years ago. As you can imagine, being 20 years old, the quality of the photograph was befitting of its age. It was faded, it was from a bit of a distance, and it was slightly out of focus. Normally, I wouldn't have taken the portraits on without a clear photo to work from, but as it was for an old friend, I did, but I did make a point of asking her not to expect too much because I wasn't sure how this was going to turn out when I couldn't see all the details I needed to see. But she was happy for me to go ahead, so that's what I did. This decision did make my job more difficult as I had to guess at small details such as the colour of the eyes and where the highlight in the entire piece should go, as well as just basic things such as the fur direction. So as I'm going through all this, I thought that it was a good opportunity to talk to you guys about some of the things that I look for in a good reference photo and why. So the first thing that I look for is clarity. If I can't zoom in and see the eyes clearly, then generally the photograph isn't clear enough. I find that most of the personality of an animal is in their eyes, and if you can't zoom in and see that small detail, then it's hard to capture the animal's character. There's a lot of detail in the eye and so many colour variations, and being able to see where the light hits and things are reflecting in the eye gives life to the portrait. I often find that if you get the eyes right, then the rest of the portrait is a little bit more forgiving because the owners look into the eyes to see the soul of their animal. So I need to be able to see those details to be able to put that across. When you're guessing at where the highlights go in the eyes, it's very easy to make an animal look cross-eyed just by placing that highlight in the wrong position. So clarity also allows you to see the correct direction that the fur grows in. If you don't follow the correct growth pattern, then you change the shape of the face and the bone structure and the way that things sit on the face, and it makes it look like a completely different animal, which obviously is an important thing for it to look like. It needs to look like the right animal when you're doing a pet portrait, especially a memorial portrait of somebody's beloved pet. So moving on for that, the next thing is the lighting. Photographs taken in natural light, preferably outdoors or next to a window, is best. This way there aren't as many weird shadows distorting the subject and you can really see the natural colouring that you need to emulate. Artificial light often has a warm tone to it, which yellows the actual colouring. Again, this is a big deal when drawing someone's pets. If you draw a more tan brown looking dog when the actual animal is more sandy and white, then the owner won't be impressed as suddenly this isn't their pet. It's really important that the photograph is well lit so you don't have to differentiate between what is an odd shadow and what's an actual marking on the animal and what colour marking that marking really is. This is different to the colours though that you see reflected in the fur from the surroundings. They need to be there because otherwise the animal will look like it's just stuck onto the background rather than actually in the photo. So the lighting is very important so that you can see as much detail and the form of the animal that you need to see in order to draw it correctly. And the last thing that I look at is the position. Just because a certain pose makes a good photo, it doesn't mean it will make a good portrait. A lot of times people take photos of their pets from a standing position looking down on their pet. A lot of the time this isn't ideal, it distorts proportions and it can look quite odd. Of course, as with all things, there are exceptions to the rules, and I'm just talking about what I find in general. I find that an animal looks best if the photo is taken at the same level as the animal and it's framed as a close-up. A photo from all the way down the garden isn't going to provide the detail that you need to make a realistic portrait. I can't draw a picture from a blob. It's just not going to happen. You can't see what's going on. Although having the pet looking straight at the camera is a perfectly acceptable pose, I also find that having a side-on profile or a three-quarter profile gives a much nicer look. So they're just the few things that I do look for when I'm looking at a reference photo, as to whether or not I'm going to accept that as a good photo. They're just starting points. There might be other things you want to consider, but they're the main ones that I look for when choosing a reference photo. So that's the reference photos. As I said at the beginning, the photograph that I got of the black German Shepherd, which is what I'm drawing here, wasn't a good one. It was old, it was blurry, it was faded. I couldn't see the eyes at all, but I still took it on. So this portrait here isn't necessarily as detailed as I would normally make it or would normally like to make it. I couldn't see the detail in the tongue either, for example, which was another stumbling block. So what I did, as I did have this reference photo that wasn't as easy to work from, is I drew my line drawing from the photograph because I could see enough of the lines to see where the eyes were. I could see the shape of the face. It wasn't completely out of focus, so I could see the basic shape of this animal, and I knew it was a long-haired German Shepherd. So I then went on to royalty-free reference photo sites like Pixabay was one, and Morguefile was another, and I typed in black German Shepherd with tongue, licking nose, I think it was, black German Shepherd licking nose, and dog licking nose, and I found a few photographs with the backside of a tongue in. So I used them as a loose reference to help me alongside the slightly more blurry photograph to get a better idea as to what the back of that tongue should look like and where the shadows should be where I couldn't quite see. I then did the same when it came to the fur. I typed in long-haired black German Shepherd and found a few more reference photos showing sort of how the hair sits. No pose was exactly right as to how the dog I had was sitting, but I found some closer so I could get a rough idea, sort of where the highlights should be hitting the hair. I say it still wasn't ideal, but it gave me more of an idea than I had to begin with. And then the last stumbling block was the eyes, and I couldn't quite get the eyes as I wanted to. I still haven't quite finished this portrait. I am going to go back in once I've done the other German Shepherd and touch up that right eye again, because as I commented on earlier, if you get the highlight in the wrong place, it makes the position of the eye look a bit off. And even though I've reworked it a few times, I'm still not quite happy with how that looks. But that's what I do if I do have a bad reference photo that I do still need to try and work from. I try and grab other royalty-free, make sure you're not stealing other people's work, make sure they're royalty-free photographs, but get your idea of where things should be from them. If you have to use a bad reference photo, might be a good idea to help you along there. But that there is just about it for this week's video. So thank you for listening. Thank you all for watching. If you found this video useful, please leave me a thumbs up. I post new content every Thursday. If you don't want to miss anything, please press the subscribe button below. You can also press that bell icon. It makes sure that you get notified by YouTube for all new content I post. That's it from me now. Bye, guys.